Welcome to Table Bible Studies with Dan and Ben. Table Bible Studies are posted every Thursday. Dennis and Benedicta are studying the Apostle Paul, and today we resume our study in the Greek city of Athens.
Now we're going to learn about Paul's ministry in Greece. Athens was at one time considered more or less the capital of Greece, but by this point in history, Corinth was the capital of Greece. That's where the city government for the nation or the national government was. But Athens was still a very important city culturally and in terms of population.
Yeah.
And so he goes there. Now, he has to leave in such a hurry, he leaves his friends behind. Some people just take him out. They say, Paul, you got to get out of here. You got to get out. So Timothy's left behind. He says, well, tell Timothy, tell these guys to come and join me, because he feels the need to be with a team.
Yeah.
Paul was not a loner. He didn't just, you read about Paul and you might suppose he's on his own. No, he's not. He's with a group. And he liked that. And that's important. Even when Jesus sent out his disciples for just a short time to minister and to announce him, he sent them out two by two. He never sent them out alone. And so anyway, Paul goes to Athens. He's by himself now for a little while. He's waiting for his group to join him, Silas and Timothy particularly. And it says, verse 16, while Paul waited for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him when he saw that the city was given over to idols. So Paul looks around and sees all kinds of idolatry. There was a saying that in Athens, there were more gods than men. In other words, they had more idols and different gods that they considered.
So one person wants to have like 7 or more idols.
Well, they believed in multiple gods for sure. So anyway, the whole city was given over to idols except for the handful of Jews that were there. There were some Jews there, not too many. And so it says, verse 17, he reasoned in the synagogue. So there was the synagogue where the Jews were, with the Jews, and with the Gentile worshipers, and in the marketplace daily with those who happened to be there. Now, notice here, he just goes to the marketplace. Why?
Yeah.
Why would he go to the marketplace? Now, you should be our resident expert on the marketplace. Most of us Americans, we don't know a thing about the marketplace because we grew up going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
But you Africans know about the marketplace. Tell us what's important about the marketplace. Why would Paul go there?
Marketplace is, a particular area or where people come to, do buying and selling.
Right.
And that marketplace, I preached in marketplaces several times before I met you even. And even when we were going to Africa, there was a time I had to do a little... we were doing rallies, so I had to preach in a marketplace. You remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that well.
So
I was your cameraman at that time. You were preaching. I was recording you and the people around you.
And the people around, So I preached like 2 places. The other side of the market, we faced first, and then inner side of the marketplace. So so it's really good to preach in a marketplace. And some of our crusades we have done in market places. And so even it's a good place, but when you are not allowed, you just have to ask if it's allowed. As a local, you don't just get into a marketplace and start preaching.
Well, that one time we were there at the marketplace, I got a bunch of flyers and started walking right down the middle of it, going to every stall and every salesperson and giving them a flyer. And you weren't too crazy at first about that, but you kind of learned to flow with it.
Yeah, I was like, no, right here now is dangerous. You walking inside the marketplace, sharing this. At that point, I don't think our security weren't there already. So I was like, no, I think we had about 1 or 2 security people with us. I'm like, this is not enough for you to start walking around the marketplace. We have to go. You were like, no, you just have to do this. So you have been to the marketplace a lot.
So the short answer for why Paul would go to the marketplace is that's where the people are.
Yeah.
That it's kind of like if you go to a football stadium when they're having a football game there, there's going to be a big crowd. If you go to the marketplace when it's a marketplace day, now in Africa, most marketplaces are not open every day. There are certain days of the week where they're open. And then other days it's just totally deserted. But if you go on marketplace day, the people are there.
Yeah.
And Paul, if you're going to win souls, you got to go where the people are. If you're going to catch fish, you go where the fish are. If you want to win souls, you go where the people are. He went to the marketplace just using common sense. Not that he felt some divine leading, Paul, go to the market necessarily, but he's got enough sense to know I've got to go where the people are.
You think he went to buy some things and then discovered that there are a lot of people here. I might as well make use of this time.
Possibly. So anyway, he starts preaching, and Paul always draws attention. He's so good, so smart, so powerful, so anointed. People notice him. Yeah. There's some people that go to a marketplace and they could talk, all day long and nobody would care or pay any attention. Yeah. But boy, they paid attention to Paul. In fact, they paid so much attention. Word got around. This Paul, I think he's a Jew, and he's trying to tell us there's only one God. And he's saying some strange things about this somebody named Jesus who he says died and then came back to life. And they're all talking. They decide we need to bring him out to the Areopagus. Now, this was almost like the Sanhedrin for the Jews. It was like a place where all the big shots hung out, and the thinkers and the philosophers and some of the legal, political leaders. This was where the big guys hung out, also known as Mars Hill. So they take him here, and they're like, well, we'd like to, we hear you've been going around the marketplaces and talking, and we'd like to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah.
So this wasn't really a legal proceeding. It's not like he'd been arrested. They're just like, okay, you're talking to people one-on-one about your philosophy. Tell us all while we're all gathered together. Tell us, what is it you have to say? What's your message?
Yeah.
Well, that's like putting meat in front of a dog, he's going to go for it, right?
Yeah.
So Paul stands up in the midst of all these important big shots, theologians, political leaders, and so forth. And he says, men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you are very religious.
Very, very religious.
Very religious. That doesn't mean they're saved, mind you. It just means they're religious people. There's no atheist among them. They might believe in 12 gods, 1,000 gods, but there's none that says there's no God. They're all a religious people. And they've got idols everywhere. So Paul says, I was passing through. I was considering the objects of your worship. Now, you can just imagine. This was beforehand. Paul, in his spare time, walks among the idols. Some people might say, well, I'm too holy. I don't want them to defile me. I'm not going around those idols. Paul's like, let me just see what they've got to say, what they've inscribed on their idols.
Okay.
And so he's checking out their idols, maybe looking for a good sermon
illustration.
Or illustration, right. So he says, I was going among your idols. I was looking at them, checking them out.
If it's today, they will video Paul. They will take a bunch of pictures of Paul.
With the idols. Yeah.
And then display him on both TV and internet. The whole website is going to carry the whole thing.
You see what kind of a man of God this is? Hanging out with the idols.
Hanging out with idols. This is what he's deceiving all of us. This is him.
That's funny. He says, so I can see you're very religious. I was going around your idols, and I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God. So they had names for almost all their gods, right?
Yeah.
Different names. But they had one, they thought, well, we may have left somebody out. We don't want to leave anybody out.
Okay.
So let's make an altar, and let's just write to the unknown God. If there's one we forgot about or don't know about, never heard about, this is for him.
That's the position you get.
So Paul, this is his starting point in his sermon. He's like, the unknown God. Now that's interesting. What he says is, the one you worship without knowing, this unknown God, him I proclaim to you. I want to tell you about this unknown God, this God you have no clue about, this God that you don't know anything about. I'm going to tell you, so pay attention.
Yeah.
And then he goes into it. God who made the world and everything in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands. And he goes on talking about how he gives life and breath to everybody and everything. And it says he's made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on the face of the earth. He's talking about the Creator. Now, I want you to notice one thing he's not doing. He's not quoting Amos or Isaiah or Jeremiah. He's talking about God, the great Creator, but he's not quoting the Hebrew scriptures. Why would he not be quoting the Hebrew scriptures?
That's a good question.
These are not Jews. These are Greeks steeped in philosophy, but had no interest in the Jewish scriptures.
Yeah.
So with the Jews, he wanted to present Jesus as the Messiah, quoting Isaiah, quoting Micah, quoting Amos, quoting all the prophets, quoting Moses. But that wouldn't have done much good with these Greeks that don't believe the Bible anyway and never read it, wouldn't even know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me, there's an illustration I use. I won't go into the whole illustration, but it involves an old-time golfer named Sam Snead. It's a great illustration about how we can be instruments in the hands of Christ. Again, I won't tell you the whole story. But when I went to Africa, I was thinking about that illustration. I thought, that's such a perfect illustration. But if I start talking about a golfer named Sam Snead, they're going to look at me like I'm crazy.
Who is he?
Who in the world is Sam Snead? First of all, he lived quite a few years ago. He's been dead for a long time. Second, Africans typically don't play much golf.
We do.
Not the village people that I go to.
We do.
No, not the village people I go to. I go to people who are so poor they don't have electricity oftentimes. They wouldn't have a clue. You put a golf club in their hand, and they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They'd think you were giving it to them to beat a mouse that came into their house.
Sweetie.
Anyway, there are some things that you have to deal with people where they are. So these are Greeks, don't know about the scriptures, don't care about the scriptures. So Paul's not going to but he's still got to get in the truth of the scriptures, the truth about Jesus, the truth about his death, his resurrection. But he's got to do it in a little different way than he would if he was preaching to a Jewish audience.
Yeah.
So he talks about how that God created everybody, put them in the different places all over the earth. And it's interesting. He says, so that they should seek the Lord in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, though he's not far from each one of us.
Yeah.
So God put us all on this earth in the desire that we should look for him. Isn't that interesting?
It's interesting.
And find him.
Yeah.
It's like, is God lost? No. Is God hiding? Yep. God hides himself. You can't see him. Someone says, well, show me God. Sorry, not going to see him on this side of things.
Yeah.
But he calls us, come look for me. In Jeremiah, it says, you shall seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart.
Yeah.
Why should we have to seek him? That's God's way. You want to know God? Seek him. You want to know Christ? Seek him. You want to know if Jesus is really who he said he was? Seek him.
Yeah.
That's how I got born again. So that's why seeking is a big deal to me. I got born again. I wasn't a believer before that, but I started reading the Bible. In my own little small dentist way, I started seeking God. But if someone said, what are you doing reading the Bible? I wouldn't say, well, I'm seeking God. I was just curious. I thought what I found out later was the Holy Spirit was moving on me to seek after God. And I started in the New Testament with Matthew. By the time I got to Revelation, I was a believer.
Yeah.
You shall seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the way Paul presented this. First of all, he was like, let me just say, what is it that you are worship up in here?
Yeah.
And the lesson there was that he didn't get there and stay there and became idol worshiper with them.
No, he did not.
He went there and looked around and, just to confirm that, yes, these people are worshiping idols. They're not worshiping the God of heaven.
Yeah.
And now he gathered himself together like, buckle up, mister. He's going to be on up in here.
Yeah.
So, and he decided to come right back at them and preach the good news and preach the Bible to them and let them know that there is another God who, they do not know.
Yeah, the God you do not know.
So,
let me tell you about him.
Right. And that is the idea we should have when we find ourselves, in the midst of people or unbelievers.
Yeah.
At the back of our mind, we should, one way or the other, present the gospel to them before we, depart from there or leave there. We don't go there and become part and parcel of them. We go there and, to save them. I think that is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move along. This is what we would call his Athens sermon.
Yeah.
But this is not a typical sermon. This is not a pastor with a pulpit in front of him and he's got his notes and he's got point A, point B, point C. This is just Paul pouring his heart out. And he says in verse 31, he's appointed a day on which he will judge the world in righteousness by the man whom he has ordained. Of course, he's talking about Jesus. He's given assurance of this to all by raising him from the dead. So now he's preaching the death and resurrection of Christ. And so, on the one hand, he's not quoting the Hebrew prophets, but on the other hand, he's basically affirming the truths of Scripture. Yeah. That man needed to be saved. Jesus came along. He died. He rose again. Yeah. God's going to judge the world. You need Jesus. So, and again, this is just a summary. When you read a sermon in Acts, you're not reading the whole sermon. They didn't have time. They didn't have a little recorder like you've got right there. They can record the whole thing. So Luke is writing this, no doubt, after the fact. He's sitting down and just jotting down the main points of Paul's sermon. Yeah. And so it says in verse 32, when they heard of the resurrection, some mocked, while others said, we want to hear you again on this matter. And Paul departed, and some men joined him and believed. So he's gathering new believers, more believers, followers of Christ, and these are becoming disciples of Jesus and also learners from Paul. They become, people that want to hang out with him, want to hear from him, teach us some more, and so forth. So everywhere Paul goes, it's pretty much the same thing. Some despise him. Some are like, well, I don't know. And there are some that are they're converted. They're brought to Christ. Yeah.
Probably most of you know my wife, Benedicta, but few of you know the amazing paths God has led her to bring her to where she is today. Benedicta was orphaned at an early age and lived with an elderly stepmother growing to adolescence. They were so poor, Benedicta had to drop out of school and sell food door to door for them to survive. As a teen, Benedicta got a job as a housemaid, which developed into a nightmare. She was required to cook, clean, wash, take care of the children, and she had to get up at 4 a.m. every day just to get her work started. Worse than that, she was frequently beaten. At around 20, she moved to the huge city of Lagos, where she started her own little business. Sometimes she prospered, but at other times she nearly starved and went days at a time without eating. At one point, she became so sick she passed out in her room and nearly died. She found herself outside of her body and she was able to see the splendors of heaven until she was sent back with a command to share her story. One day, however, her life changed when an American evangelist came to her community to preach. And of course, that was me. The rest, as they say, is history. Benedicta has shared her life story in a recently published autobiography, and you can get it on Amazon as either an ebook or a paperback. A link to this book on Amazon is in the description.